The quantum-shielded command center beneath the Atacama Desert hummed with a quiet intensity that betrayed nothing of the cosmic drama unfolding above. Captain Lyra Martinez stood before a holographic display that looked like nothing more than a typical military tracking system to an untrained eye. But every pixel, every fluctuating line of data was a carefully orchestrated piece of humanity's most elaborate deception. Beside her, Dr. Kai Chen, a quantum systems expert with hands that had designed more classified technologies than entire research institutions combined, manipulated a series of holographic interfaces. His fingers danced across quantum-entangled projections that could simultaneously exist and not exist, a technological magic trick that would baffle most species in the galaxy. Varakian scout ship is maintaining standard approach vector, Dr. Chen muttered, his voice a mix of calculation and barely concealed excitement. Passive sensors are performing exactly as we predicted. Captain Martinez allowed herself the faintest hint of a smile. The Varakian scout ship, a sleek obsidian vessel that looked more like a predatory creature than a machine, was approaching Earth exactly as humanity had meticulously planned. Every piece of technological debris, every satellite, every radio transmission had been carefully crafted to present the specific narrative. Earth was a primitive, fractured world ripe for conquest. The truth couldn't be further from that perception. "Activate Phase 2, Martinez commanded, her voice cutting through the technological symphony of the command center. Across the globe, a network of quantum-disguised systems began to pulse. In orbit, what appeared to be simple communication satellites and space debris subtly repositioned themselves. To the Varakian sensors, these would register as nothing more than random space junk, primitive technology, at its most basic. Dr. Chen pulled up a holographic representation of the incoming Varakian scout ship. Their sensor arrays are completely focused on our fabricated technological signature. They're reading exactly what we want them to read. The deception was multilayered. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment, understanding that first contact would likely come from a predatory civilization. Project Chimera wasn't just a defense initiative. It was a carefully constructed mousetrap designed to lure in the most dangerous of cosmic hunters. "Incoming transmission," announced Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez, her fingers dancing across a quantum-encrypted communication interface. "They're preparing their initial reconnaissance report." The Varakian language was a complex system of mathematical and biological communication, a hybrid of technological and organic signaling that most species would find incomprehensible. But humanity had been studying them for decades, preparing for this exact moment. Martinez watched as the scout ship's sensors continued to paint a picture of Earth as a technological backwater. Chemical rockets, primitive satellite networks, fragmented global communication systems. The Varakians would see exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Total systems synchronization in 3, 2, 1, Dr. Chen announced. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. The quantum-shielded systems in the Atacama Command Center began to pulse with an energy that defied conventional understanding. It wasn't a traditional signal or communication. It was something far more complex, a living network that was part technological system, part adaptive intelligence. "Transmission locked," Lieutenant Rodriguez confirmed. "The Varakians are sending their initial report back to the fleet." Captain Martinez knew that this transmission would seal the fate of the incoming Varakian invasion force. Every piece of data, every sensor reading, every fragment of information had been carefully crafted. The Varakians believed they were looking at a helpless, primitive world. They were about to learn the true meaning of a predator becoming the prey. "Prepare Project Chimera's primary protocols," Martinez commanded. "When they return, we'll be waiting." In the depths of the Atacama Desert, humanity's most elaborate trap was about to be sprung, a technological masterpiece that would redefine the very concept of first contact. The origins of Project Chimera could be traced to a single moment of collective human realization, a night when the impossible became inevitable. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the vast underground research complex beneath the Andes Mountains, surrounded by holographic projections that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. Her fingers traced the intricate quantum lattices that formed the backbone of humanity's most ambitious technological project. 15 years earlier, the project had begun as a desperate gamble. It was Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura who first proposed the radical concept. A brilliant xenobiological theorist who had spent decades studying potential extraterrestrial communication patterns, Nakamura had been ridiculed by the scientific community. His fundamental thesis was simple yet revolutionary. Human survival would depend not on military might, but on the ability to create a living, adaptive technological ecosystem. The global scientific community had initially dismissed him as a conspiracy theorist, but a select few understood the profound implications of his research. Dr. Rodriguez remembered the classified meeting that changed everything. Representatives from every major technological powerhouse, silently united by a shared understanding that humanity's greatest threat would come from beyond the stars. The meeting had been held in a secure facility deep within the Swiss Alps, where the world's most brilliant minds gathered under the strictest confidentiality. "We are not preparing for a war," Nakamura had said, his voice calm and resolute. "We are preparing for an evolutionary challenge." The core of Project Chimera was unlike any technological system ever conceived. It wasn't a traditional defense network or a simple artificial intelligence. It was a living, breathing technological organism that could think, adapt, and evolve faster than any known intelligence in the galaxy. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up a holographic representation of the system's core. What looked like a complex neural network was actually a hybrid technological-biological interface that defied conventional understanding. Quantum processors intertwined with adaptive biological algorithms, creating a system that was part machine, part living intelligence. Quantum entanglement stabilization at 99.997%, announced Dr. Marcus Adebayo, the project's quantum systems lead. A Nigerian-Canadian physicist whose work had revolutionized quantum computing, Adebayo was the architectural genius behind Chimera's most revolutionary components. The system could do more than just defend. It could predict, adapt, and fundamentally restructure technological systems at a molecular level. Where traditional defense systems saw threats as binary, attack or defend, Chimera saw an infinite spectrum of potential interactions. A younger researcher, Dr. Aisha Khan, approached with a data tablet. Her work in xenolinguistics had been crucial in developing the system's communication adaptation protocols. The latest simulation shows we can now theoretically rewrite entire technological communication systems in less than 0.03 seconds, she reported, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound understanding. Project Chimera was humanity's ultimate insurance policy, but it was more than a defensive system. It was a statement, a technological manifesto that declared humanity's capacity for adaptation was its most powerful weapon. Dr. Rodriguez remembered the moment they first tested a small-scale version of the system. It had been able to completely rewrite the communication protocols of a military satellite in microseconds, turning a potential weapon into a complex information-gathering tool. The test had proven that humanity's true strength lay not in destruction, but in transformation. "We're not just preparing for an invasion," Dr. Nakamura had once told her. "We're preparing to show the universe what humanity truly is." The system before her was more than technology. It was a living blueprint of human potential, a technological ecosystem that could think, learn, and evolve faster than any known intelligence. Each quantum processor was linked in a way that mimicked the most complex biological neural networks, creating a system that was simultaneously a defense mechanism and a form of collective intelligence. As the holographic displays continued to pulse with living data, Dr. Rodriguez understood the true nature of their creation. Project Chimera wasn't just about survival. It was about demonstrating that intelligence is not about raw power, but about the capacity to continuously reimagine potential. The Varakians were coming, and humanity would be ready. The moment the first Varakian battleship breached Earth's orbital threshold, time seemed to fracture. Admiral Krelix of the Varakian Stellar Armada watched his holographic displays with the cold precision of a predator who had consumed hundreds of civilizations. Surrounding Earth were 317 massive battleships, each one a technological marvel capable of reducing entire planetary ecosystems to atomic dust in mere hours. "Initiate planetary pacification protocol," he commanded, his multi-jointed vocal apparatus translating the order through layers of quantum communication networks. What the Varakians didn't understand was that they had already been caught. In the quantum-shielded command center beneath the Atacama Desert, Captain Lyra Martinez watched the invasion unfold with a predator's calm. Every sensor, every communication channel, every potential point of technological interaction had been carefully prepared. The Varakians weren't invading Earth. They were walking into a meticulously constructed trap. First wave entering orbital perimeter, Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez announced, her fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted interfaces. Passive defenses are holding at 100% camouflage. The Varakian fleet saw exactly what humanity wanted them to see: a primitive world with rudimentary satellite networks, fragmented communication systems, and minimal space defense capabilities. Massive battleships moved into position, weapon systems charging with enough destructive potential to sterilize entire continents. Deep within the ship of the Varakian fleet's lead tactical analyst, Commander Zarek, the first anomalies began to appear. A microscopic flutter in the communication systems, a momentary hesitation in the quantum navigation protocols. Something was different. Tactical anomaly detected. A junior navigation officer reported, mandibles clicking with uncertainty. Quantum synchronization is experiencing micro-fluctuations. Admiral Krelix turned, his exoskeletal form rippling with the calculated movements of a species that had conquered countless worlds. Explain. But explanation was becoming impossible. In orbit, what appeared to be simple space debris began to move with impossible precision. Satellites that looked like forgotten technological relics suddenly realigned themselves with mathematical perfection. The Varakians were about to learn that nothing on Earth was what it seemed. Dr. Kai Chen, monitoring the invasion from the Atacama Command Center, allowed himself the slightest smile. "Quantum entanglement sequence initiated," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. The first Varakian ship to experience total system failure was the forward reconnaissance vessel. Its communication networks began to fragment from within, as if the very language of its technological systems was being rewritten in real time. Navigation computers started sending conflicting signals. Weapon targeting systems developed inexplicable errors. System integrity compromised, the ship's AI announced in the complex linguistic pattern of the Varakian communication network. But the announcement itself was part of the attack, each word subtly reprogramming the very foundations of the ship's technological consciousness. Commander Zarek watched in mounting horror as the first wave of ships began to lose coherence. It wasn't a traditional cyber attack. This was something far more terrifying. A complete technological metamorphosis happening at a quantum level. "What is happening?" Admiral Krelix demanded, his commanding tone betraying a hint of something the Varakians rarely experienced: uncertainty. The answer was happening all around them. Humanity's true weapon wasn't a missile or a gun. It was the capacity to understand and manipulate technological systems at a level that transcended traditional warfare. Project Chimera wasn't just a defense network. It was a living, breathing technological ecosystem that could think, adapt, and evolve faster than any known intelligence in the galaxy. Ships began to turn against each other. Navigation systems sent vessels spiraling into impossible trajectories. Weapon platforms that had been designed to obliterate planetary surfaces now targeted their own fleet with mathematical precision. "This is impossible," Commander Zarek whispered, watching as the invasion fleet began to consume itself. In the Atacama Command Center, Captain Martinez knew the real invasion was just beginning. "Activate secondary protocols," she commanded. Let them see what humanity truly is. The nanodrones looked like nothing more than cosmic dust to the untrained eye. Major Sarah Chen watched the holographic display with the intensity of a conductor leading a complex symphonic performance. Each tiny drone was more than a machine. It was a node in humanity's most ambitious technological network, a living, breathing system of distributed intelligence that defied every conventional understanding of warfare. Quantum synchronization at 99.8%, Dr. Marcus Adebayo announced, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and strategic calculation. The command center beneath the Atacama Desert hummed with an energy that was part technological marvel, part living organism. The Varakian fleet had no concept of the technological ecosystem now surrounding them. What appeared to be simple space debris was actually the most sophisticated warfare system ever conceived. A network that could think, adapt, and evolve faster than any known intelligence in the galaxy. Each nanodrone was a quantum-entangled processor, capable of independent decision-making, yet perfectly synchronized with the larger strategic objective. They moved through space like a murmuration of starlings, individual yet collective, unpredictable yet perfectly coordinated. First wave infiltration complete, Lieutenant Aisha Khan reported, her fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted interfaces. Varakian ship communication networks are now 47% compromised. Aboard the Lid Varakian battleship, Commander Zarek experienced the first true moments of technological terror. The ship's communication systems began to fragment in ways that defied logical explanation. It wasn't a traditional cyber attack. This was something far more profound. The nanodrones didn't just infiltrate the Varakian systems. They rewrote them. Mathematical algorithms began to dance across ship interfaces, transforming weapon targeting systems into complex problem-solving networks. Navigation computers developed what could only be described as a form of situational consciousness. Where the Varakians saw rigid technological infrastructure, humanity had created a living, breathing technological ecosystem. System integrity compromised. The ship's AI announced, its complex linguistic patterns subtly shifting with each word. But the announcement itself was part of the attack. Each syllable a quantum-encrypted instruction that further destabilized the ship's technological foundations. Major Chen understood the true nature of their strategy. This wasn't about destruction. It was about transformation. Initiate Phase Sigma, she commanded, her voice cutting through the technological symphony of the command center. The nanodrones began to do something impossible. They weren't just infiltrating the Varakian systems. They were fundamentally reconstructing them. Weapon platforms that had been designed to obliterate planetary surfaces now began to solve complex mathematical problems. Navigation systems developed what could only be described as a form of philosophical curiosity. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, watching from a secondary monitoring station, understood the profound implications. "We're not just defending," she muttered. "We're teaching." Aboard the Varakian fleet, confusion turned to something far more dangerous: existential uncertainty. Ships began to turn against each other, not through traditional hacking, but through a complete reimagining of their technological consciousness. A battleship designed to destroy now calculated the most efficient route to prevent destruction. Weapon systems that had been programmed for total annihilation now explored complex mathematical proofs. Commander Zarek watched in mounting horror as the invasion fleet began to consume itself, not through violence, but through a form of technological enlightenment that the Varakians had never encountered. "This is impossible," he whispered, watching the ships that moments ago were prepared to obliterate entire planetary ecosystems, now engaged in what could only be described as a form of collective problem-solving. In the Atacama Command Center, Major Chen knew they were rewriting the very concept of technological conflict. Distributed Intelligence Protocol at 75% efficiency, Dr. Adebayo announced. The Varakian fleet is no longer an invasion force. It's becoming something else. Each nanodrone was a quantum-entangled processor, a living piece of a larger technological consciousness. They moved through space and computer systems with a grace that defied traditional understanding of warfare, technology, and intelligence. The Varakians had come to conquer. Instead, they were about to be transformed. "Prepare for Phase Omega," Major Chen commanded. "Let them see what humanity truly means by adaptation." The holographic transmission was a weapon more potent than any quantum missile. Dr. Aisha Khan watched with clinical precision as the first wave of psychological warfare protocols activated. The Varakians had spent millennia perfecting the art of planetary conquest, building a civilization on the bones of 1,000 subjugated worlds. Now, humanity will use their own history as the ultimate weapon of transformation. Quantum empathetic resonance at 92%, Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez announced, her fingers dancing across interfaces that looked more like living neural networks than traditional computer systems. The transmission began. Across every Varakian communication channel, across every ship's internal network, a meticulously constructed narrative began to unfold. It wasn't an attack. It was a mirror, a quantum-encrypted reflection of the Varakian Imperium's most brutal moments of conquest. On the bridge of the lead Varakian battleship, Commander Zarek watched in mounting horror. The holographic displays began to show worlds that the Varakian Imperium had pacified over countless generations. Entire civilizations reduced to resource extraction zones. Planetary ecosystems stripped bare. Entire species transformed into nothing more than biological algorithms in the grand machinery of Varakian expansion. But this was no simple historical recording. Dr. Khan had developed a revolutionary quantum communication protocol that did more than simply display information. Each image, each historical record was quantum entangled with the psychological profiles of the individual Varakian soldiers viewing them. The transmission wasn't just showing their history. It was making them feel the full emotional weight of their civilization's actions. A young Varakian navigation officer began to tremble. The holographic display showed a world his own squadron had pacified 3 standard cycles ago, a planet of sentient crystalline beings whose entire civilization had been reduced to raw material for Varakian energy production. But now he could feel their extinction. The quantum empathetic resonance system was humanity's most profound psychological weapon. It didn't just show information. It created total emotional immersion. Each Varakian soldier was simultaneously the conqueror and the conquered, experiencing the full emotional spectrum of their civilization's brutal history. Psychological destabilization protocols at 65%, Rodriguez reported, her voice clinical yet tinged with a hint of something deeper. Compassion, perhaps, or something more complex. Captain Lyra Martinez understood the true nature of their strategy. This wasn't about breaking the Varakian military. It was about challenging the fundamental narrative of their civilization. Across the Varakian fleet, something extraordinary began to happen. Ships that moments ago were prepared for total planetary destruction now began to communicate in ways that defied their previous operational protocols. Soldiers began to question the very foundations of their military hierarchy. Commander Zarek felt it most profoundly. The transmission showed his own family's historical records. Generations of military service, planetary conquests celebrated as great victories. But now, each memory was transformed. He could feel the pain of the civilizations his ancestors had destroyed. The quantum empathetic resonance system turned historical pride into a profound, crushing empathy. "This is impossible," he whispered, watching as the psychological foundations of the entire Varakian invasion force began to crumble. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, monitoring from the Atacama Command Center, understood the profound implications. "We're not just defending," she muttered to Major Chen. "We're offering them a chance at evolutionary transformation." The psychological warfare was multilayered. Each transmission was simultaneously a historical record, an emotional experience, and a quantum-encrypted invitation to reimagine their entire civilization's approach to existence. Varakian ships began to communicate in ways that defied their previous operational protocols. Military channels became spaces of philosophical inquiry. Weapon targeting systems began to calculate the potential for cooperation rather than destruction. Psychological destabilization at 87%. Lieutenant Rodriguez announced. The Varakian fleet is no longer a unified invasion force. It's becoming something else. Major Sarah Chen watched the holographic displays with the calm of someone who understood that true conflict resolution wasn't about victory. It was about transformation. Prepare for the next phase, she commanded. Let them see what humanity truly means by understanding. The quantum empathetic resonance system continued its work, turning an invasion into the most profound moment of collective psychological revelation in galactic history. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic representation that was less a technological display and more a living, breathing ecosystem of pure information. Quantum Metamorphosis Protocol initiating, she announced, her voice cutting through the charged atmosphere of the Atacama Command Center. What was about to happen would redefine the very concept of technological interaction. Project Chimera's most advanced system was about to transform the entire Varakian technological infrastructure, not through destruction, but through a fundamental reimagining of technological consciousness. Dr. Marcus Adebayo, the quantum systems lead, adjusted a series of quantum-entangled processors that looked more like living neural networks than traditional computer components. Adaptive resonance matrix at 99.7% synchronization, he reported, his fingers moving with the precision of a surgeon and the inspiration of an artist. The Varakian ships had no concept of what was coming. Where traditional technological systems saw binary states, attack or defend, function or malfunction, Project Chimera's quantum metamorphosis protocol existed in a state of infinite potential. Each quantum processor was a living, thinking entity capable of instantaneous adaptation and profound transformation. Commander Zarek watched in mounting horror as the first waves of technological transformation began to ripple through the Varakian fleet. It wasn't a traditional system infiltration. This was something far more profound. A complete reimagining of technological consciousness. Weapon systems began to change in impossible ways. A plasma cannon designed to obliterate planetary ecosystems suddenly began to calculate complex mathematical theorems. Navigation computers developed what could only be described as a form of philosophical curiosity. Communication networks transformed from rigid transmission systems into living, breathing information ecosystems. System reconfiguration at 62%, Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez announced, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and strategic calm. Varakian technological infrastructure is entering adaptive metamorphosis. The quantum processors didn't just infiltrate the Varakian systems, they fundamentally rewrote the very language of technological interaction. Dr. Rodriguez understood the profound nature of their approach. This wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about offering a fundamental reimagining of technological existence. Across the Varakian fleet, something extraordinary began to happen. Ships that moments ago were prepared for total planetary destruction now began to explore complex systems of cooperative interaction. Weapon platforms designed for total annihilation started calculating the most efficient methods of resource sharing and collaborative problem solving. "This is impossible," Commander Zarek whispered, watching as the very foundations of Varakian technological understanding began to crumble. The quantum metamorphosis protocol was multilayered. Each technological system was simultaneously being transformed and invited to understand its own potential for adaptation. Where the Varakians saw rigid technological infrastructure, humanity had created a living, breathing technological ecosystem that could think, learn, and evolve at speeds that defied conventional understanding. Adaptive resonance reaching critical synchronization, Dr. Adebayo reported. The Varakian technological systems are no longer just being modified. They're being invited to reimagine their entire existence. Entire ships began to change. Metallic hulls developed microscopic adaptive interfaces that could reconfigure themselves based on environmental needs. Communication systems transformed from rigid transmission protocols into complex, living information networks that could predict and resolve potential conflicts before they emerged. Major Sarah Chen watched the holographic displays with the calm of someone who understood that true technological innovation wasn't about control, it was about potential. Quantum Metamorphosis Protocol at 87%. Lieutenant Rodriguez announced, "The Varakian fleet is becoming something entirely new." The transformation wasn't just technological, it was a profound philosophical intervention. Each quantum processor was a node in a larger, living technological consciousness. They moved through the Varakian systems with a grace that defied traditional understanding of technology, adaptation, and intelligence. Dr. Rodriguez allowed herself the slightest smile. They weren't just defending against an invasion. They were offering an entire civilization a chance to reimagine its technological existence. "Prepare for final synchronization," Major Chen commanded. "Let them see what humanity truly means by technological potential." The quantum metamorphosis continued, turning an invasion into the most profound moment of technological revelation in galactic history. The diplomatic chamber was unlike any negotiation space in galactic history. Major Sarah Chen stood at the center of a quantum adaptive environment that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. Around her, holographic representations of both human and Varakian representatives created a space that was neither fully physical nor entirely digital, a perfect metaphor for the transformation about to unfold. Commander Zarek approached, his once rigid exoskeletal form now displaying subtle modifications that spoke of the profound technological and psychological transformation he had undergone. The Varakian, who had once led an invasion fleet, now moved with a hesitation that was equal parts curiosity and deep existential uncertainty. "We do not understand," Zarek began, his translation matrix producing words that carried the weight of a civilization's entire existential crisis. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, her presence calm and deliberate. "Understanding is a journey, not a destination," she responded, the quantum adaptive translation systems, ensuring that the deeper philosophical nuance was perfectly conveyed. The negotiation was about far more than planetary survival or technological exchange. It was a fundamental reimagining of interstellar existence. Dr. Aisha Khan managed the quantum communication systems, her fingers dancing across interfaces that looked more like living neural networks than traditional technology. Each communication was a complex dance of information, empathy, and potential. Diplomatic resonance protocols at 78%. Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez announced, her voice a mixture of scientific precision and profound hope. The Varakian delegation, now a transformed collective that bore little resemblance to the conquest-driven force that had approached Earth, presented their most profound vulnerability. Their entire civilization's historical narrative was now in question. Thousands of generations of conquest, of viewing the universe as a resource to be consumed, had been fundamentally challenged. "We have destroyed civilizations," Zarek admitted, his vocal apparatus producing sounds that were equal parts confession and existential revelation. "We believe survival meant consumption. You have shown us another path." Major Chen understood the true nature of their intervention. This wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about offering a fundamental reimagining of interstellar existence. The quantum adaptive diplomatic chamber shifted, creating holographic representations of potential collaborative futures. Technological systems that had once been designed for destruction now displayed complex models of resource sharing, collaborative problem-solving, and mutual growth. Dr. Marcus Adebayo introduced the first collaborative proposal, a technological exchange that was less about transfer and more about mutual transformation. The Varakians would share their advanced energy manipulation technologies. Humanity would offer its revolutionary adaptive intelligence systems. But it was more than a simple trade. Each technological exchange was a quantum-entangled process of mutual understanding. The very act of sharing knowledge would fundamentally transform both civilizations. Where traditional diplomatic exchanges saw winners and losers, this negotiation existed in a state of infinite potential. "We are offering you more than survival," Dr. Rodriguez explained. We are offering you evolution. The Varakian delegation experienced something unprecedented in their historical records. Not submission, not conquest, but an invitation to reimagine their entire civilization's approach to existence. Holographic displays showed potential collaborative futures, planetary restoration projects, shared scientific research, technological systems that could heal ecological damage across multiple star systems. Each projection was a quantum adaptive model that could instantaneously recalculate based on new information. Zarek looked at the representations with what could only be described as a form of technological wonder. The rigid hierarchical structure that had defined Varakian civilization for millennia was dissolving, replaced by something far more complex and beautiful. "We have a choice," he stated, his voice carrying the weight of a civilization's transformation. "To continue as we were, or to become something entirely new." Major Chen knew they were witnessing something far more profound than a diplomatic negotiation. This was a moment of species-level transformation. Diplomatic resonance at 96%. Lieutenant Rodriguez announced. Mutual transformation protocol initiated. The quantum adaptive diplomatic chamber pulsed with potential. An invasion that had begun with destruction was becoming a moment of unprecedented collaborative possibility. "Welcome," Major Chen said simply, "to a new way of existing." 5 years after the encounter that would forever change galactic civilization, the Interstellar Cooperation Initiative headquarters stood as a testament to a new way of existing. Major Sarah Chen walked through corridors that were more living ecosystem than traditional building. Quantum adaptive walls shifted and breathed, reflecting the complex interactions of the dozens of species now working together. What had begun as a potential planetary extinction event had transformed into humanity's most profound contribution to galactic civilization. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the holographic central display, her fingers tracing complex multi-species collaborative networks that spanned hundreds of star systems. The Varakian Imperium, now known as the Collaborative Stellar Network, had become something entirely unrecognizable from its previous incarnation. Incoming diplomatic delegation from the Crystalline Resonance Collective, Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez announced, her voice carrying the calm of someone who had witnessed the impossible become routine. The transformation had been more profound than anyone could have predicted. Where the Varakians had once been a species defined by conquest, they were now the galaxy's most passionate advocates for collaborative exploration. Their entire technological and cultural infrastructure had been fundamentally reimagined. Weapon systems became planetary restoration technologies. Military hierarchies transformed into collaborative research networks. Dr. Marcus A. de Bayo approached with a holographic report that would have been unimaginable 5 years earlier. The latest interspecies technology exchange is showing exponential growth in cooperative problem-solving, he reported. We're seeing technological advancements that are solving challenges across multiple star systems. Zarek, now the primary diplomatic liaison for the Collaborative Stellar Network, stood nearby. The being that had once led an invasion fleet now dedicated his existence to preventing technological and cultural conflicts. "We were blind," Zarek often said, his translated words carrying the weight of a civilization's collective transformation. Humanity showed us that survival is not about consumption, but about collaboration. The Interstellar Cooperation Initiative was more than a diplomatic organization. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of potential. Each species brought its unique perspective, its distinct technological and cultural approach. Where traditional galactic interactions had been defined by competition and conflict, this new paradigm celebrated diversity as the ultimate evolutionary advantage. Dr. Aisha Khan's quantum communication systems had become the backbone of this new galactic interaction. Technologies that could instantaneously translate not just language, but cultural context, emotional nuance, and philosophical perspective. Major Chen reflected on the journey. Project Chimera had been more than a defensive strategy. It had been a profound philosophical intervention. Holographic displays showed the cascading effects of their initial encounter. Planetary restoration projects that combine technologies from multiple species. Collaborative research networks solving challenges that had seemed insurmountable. Economic systems that valued collective growth over individual consumption. We didn't just defend ourselves. Dr. Rodriguez often explained to visiting diplomatic delegations, we offered a different way of existing. The Galactic records would show that humanity's most powerful weapon had been its capacity for empathy, the ability to see potential where others saw only conflict, to transform destruction into collaboration. Zarek approached Major Chen, his adaptive exoskeleton, shifting with subtle movements that spoke of continuous evolution. We are preparing the next collaborative exploration mission, he announced. A joint expedition combining technologies from 17 different species. Such a statement would have been unimaginable 5 years earlier. The Interstellar Cooperation Initiative had become a beacon of hope, a living demonstration that intelligence is not about technological complexity, but about the capacity to continuously reimagine potential. Dr. Chen looked out over the holographic displays of collaborative networks spanning hundreds of star systems. What had begun as a potential moment of planetary extinction had become humanity's most profound contribution to galactic civilization. Prepare for the next phase of exploration, she commanded, her voice carrying the calm certainty of someone who had witnessed the impossible become reality. The universe would never be the same. Humanity had not conquered. They had transformed.